Hey, everybody, it's Craig Syracusa. Welcome to another episode of Walk in Faith. This is exciting. Ignacyo Matynia is sitting down with me. Ignacyo, thank you so much.
No
I got to
problem.
tell you, look, when you get a call from Father Ron from St. Ignatius, you take it serious, okay? He said,
Absolutely.
I didn't even say need, he said, you have to meet Ignacyo. And I am extremely grateful to you and to Father Ron for making an introduction. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Father Ron. No,
I,
it's a pleasure to meet you. You don't often come across people that come from the neighborhood that are invested in the business and also are strong rooted in their faith.
Yeah, honestly, that's the problem because I was the famous guy at St. Ignatius Parish, okay? I was the guy. I moved to Jersey, for sort of, to get more space, no offense. My parents still there. But now, when Father Ron spoke about you, I did some research. I said, let's see if this guy got more credits. And I'll tell you, man, that's it. That's it. I'm passing the baton over to you. You have beat me. I mean, who could say I don't have pictures sitting next to Leonardo DiCaprio and Jamie Foxx, okay? You're literally sitting. I don't know if it's a SAG Awards or what,
Yeah,
but you're
SAG
sitting
award.
there. I mean, so you have me beat. That's it.
I
It's
think
yours.
maybe I just prayed a little harder than you. That's it.
It might have been. I don't know what it was. I don't know, but I'll ask God when I get to heaven. But the thing about it, right, is all kidding aside. I mean, I've interviewed thousands of celebrities, and a lot of times they sort of people think they're hatched, right? So if people were to look at your career, especially those photos, they'll say, "Oh, Ignacyo just came out of nowhere." But what they forget, or they don't know, or they don't want to know, because I think it's easier to just call it luck. They don't understand the struggle that we go through, that you go through. I can't imagine that you came from, is it Poland? Is that where you were
I
born?
was born in Poland, yeah.
I can't imagine you came from Poland and poof, your career just took off. I mean, what did you go through? Tell us about the struggle, the journey.
It was a long time coming, and acting wasn't necessarily the first thing that I had intended on doing with my life. It was kind of one of those things that I hate to say it, but for lack of better words, I fell into it. So my family moved here when I was 3 years old. We lived in Florida. Well, first we moved to Pensacola, and then we lived in Nashville, Tennessee, and then we moved back to Orlando. Because my dad had a work visa here, and they were moving him with work, and then we finally got established in Brooklyn, and that's where I grew up, and that's where I went to St. Athanasius there, and that's kind of how we have our mutual contacts. So I went to school at St. Athanasius. I went to Severian High School because I wanted to follow my friends, and at the time my family was moving over to Staten Island, and I had a thing against Staten Island for some reason. I don't know why. It's not as bad as they say it is, But yeah, so I moved to Staten Island, was in high school, and then I finished high school, and I had this, my family's all in medical. Everyone in Poland has like a medical degree. They're doctors, surgeons, dentists, you name it. And so I was kind of following in that same trajectory, but like kind of because it was pushed on me. Not so much that I kind of, decided that this is what I wanted to do. I didn't know anything else. From like birth, it was ingrained that you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer. Not so much a lawyer, but more a doctor. And so I went to SUNY Albany for 3.5 years. I studied pre-med, and then I decided to drop out of school and pursue an acting career. And that's making a long story short. But there's a lot of things that happened in between when I was in school. I started thinking for myself, because for the first time when you go away to college, you're not living with your parents. You have these new responsibilities that you never expected to have because mom and dad always kind of took care of those things for you. So you start developing your own sense of self. And with that sense of self came an understanding that I didn't want to do this thing that I've almost dedicated my entire life to doing. And that was a little daunting. And I had to make a decision. And I think I remember the day I told my parents I was dropping out. It was the first decision that I've made that I knew nobody was going to talk me out of. There was no way anyone can tell me that, no, this is better for you. Like if you don't do this, I mean, I heard it all. I mean, people were telling me I was going to be a vagrant living on the streets. I was going to be begging for money, all this nonsense. And I didn't even tell them I want to be an actor. I just told them I want to drop out of school.
Oh
But
my
one
God.
thing, one thing led to another. I was fortunate enough to have met someone in college who kind of put the idea in my head. It was one of my teachers, and she said that maybe I should try out one of the acting courses. I think she thought I had a good personality for it, and I kind of applied for the program. And the man in charge, not going to name any names, but the man in charge of the program at the time told me not to waste anyone's time because it's my course load for pre-med. It's not for someone that wants to do this as a hobby. This is for people that are taking this completely seriously. And so that kind of lit a fire under me.
Mm-hmm.
And I started taking classes in Manhattan. And all in this time, I started getting this idea that, I didn't know this was something people did for a living. And so I started understanding the business more. I was taking these awful classes that now in hindsight, I would never really call acting classes. But in those classes, I was fortunate enough to have met someone who offered to work with me for free and teach me everything they knew. And it was a man named Sedley Bloomfield. And this man taught me everything that there is to know about the art of acting and portraying someone else's life. And once I met this guy, I decided, like, that's it. This is what I'm going to do. So I dropped out of college and I worked with him for free. He told me, because I asked him one day, I was like, why are you doing this for free? And he was like, well, I have to pass on the torch. Kind of like what you said, give the baton over. And once upon a time, someone taught me all these things, and they told me it's my job and my responsibility to pass this on to somebody one day. He was like, and I saw you and I thought that you were the right person. So that's what he did. And for about a year and a half, 2 years, I met him twice every week under the one rule that if I ever come unprepared to any of our meetings or classes, that he would stop working with me immediately. Thankfully, I really took it seriously. I enjoyed his time. I enjoyed his lessons because they weren't just about acting. They were about life. They were about being a person. They were about experiences. I learned a lot of new point of views that I otherwise would have never been ever exposed to if I didn't drop out of school. So I learned this stuff with him, and then one thing led to another. I got signed to an agency. All in the while, I was kind of like throwing stuff, seeing what stuck, doing short films, small commercials that barely paid anything, student films, just practicing. And then, eventually I got to like the bigger auditions with the agents, and I got co-starring roles on TV shows, which led to bigger co-starring roles, which led to paying jobs. And it was like we were working up the ladder, So I worked up that ladder till 2019. And all the while I was kind of, I had a survival job, right? I got exposed to entertainment when I was 16 years old at Severian High School. I was dancing at a Sweet 16, and someone came up to me and they were like, oh, you look like you'd have fun working here. It was one of the DJs. And he was like, why don't you take our card? And if you're ever interested in working for us, we're looking for new dancers, and come to the office. And so I got the card, and my buddy Carmine, I brought it up to my buddy Carmine, who worked at one of these companies. The company was called Trio Productions. And Carmine brought me into the office. I met the owner, Gary, and Gary gave me a job. And I started dancing. I learned how to DJ. I taught myself how to MC. Well, Gary taught me how to MC, and I was doing that on the side. So all the while I was learning how to act in front of the camera, but then I was out in front of people constantly. So the combination of these two things created something really unique, So I did a lot of stage plays, but then at the same time I was hosting Sweet 16s, bar and bat mitzvahs. I remember I did my first wedding when I was like 18 or 19 years old. And then I was exposed to seeing all these older people doing this thing. So it's always been about learning these new point of views. And one thing led to another, and I decided I was going to move to LA. In 2018, I said, I'm going to save up my money this year and move to California and try my luck there, because I noticed I kind of reached a plateau in New York. The roles were very small. They were for 1, 2, or 3 TV shows. The student films were either SVA, NYU, NIFA, Hofstra. Columbia, and like if you were lucky, everyone was trying out for those because there were no like TV shows to really be auditioning for. And so I realized, okay, I've done all of that. What's next? And for the longest time, I was really I had a lot of trepidation about the thought of going to LA because it's, you know, you're leaving New York and everyone in New York says, you know, New York's the best place. New York's got everything. Why do you need to leave New York? I learned from a lot of people that a lot of people here are scared. A lot of people here are scared to step out of their comfort zone because they've known this all their life. They build this hype around New York City. And that's not to say that's not true. New York is a great place, but you always have to step outside your comfort zone to grow. And I made this commitment to myself that I'll save up enough money in 2018 to move out in 2019. I did just that. I was in a relationship that was kind of wonky and ended up falling apart because of my decision to move to LA. And at the end of 2018, I made enough money and I was like, you know what? I don't know if I want to go to LA. Maybe I want to get an apartment in Brooklyn or in Manhattan and kind of keep doing
maybe Williamsburg.
Maybe Williamsburg, Dumbo, you name it, you know? But I told you I was working for the DJ company. I had these three things happen, one after the other, that kind of reminded me what I worked so hard up to that point to do. So first thing that happened, I came home from a wedding one night. I got home from the wedding at around 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. Because, you know, we do the party, we load, we unload. I get home, and then I had a 3-hour turnaround to drive to Long Island to do a foundation event for I forgot what it was for, but it was a non-for-profit event. We were doing it for charity. So I had a 3-hour turnaround. In those 3 hours, I got home. I didn't even change. I fell asleep on the couch, woke up, got back to the truck to go leave for work. Didn't shower, didn't brush my teeth. Nasty, I know, but it was busy season.
That's life. I get it.
Yeah. So I go to the truck and I go to unlock the back door because I left my bag with my computer in there because I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna lock it up. No one's gonna do anything. I go to open it and it's open. And I'm like, did I leave this unlocked? What's wrong with me? And then I go to open the handle. I'm like, it's broken. And like it's 2 and 2 aren't being put together yet. And then I open the door and everything's gone.
Oh my God.
Everything. They stole everything. And like, this was equipment that
And this was in Staten Island?
This was in Staten Island. This is equipment that I
not saying anything. It doesn't happen where I am.
No, it wouldn't. In Jersey, no. You'd have to get 4 hitchhikers to hitchhik one after the other to get to wherever you are. Yeah, no. So the first thing that happened was I got robbed for all my equipment, my hard drives, my turntables, my speakers, all of it gone. Everything. And so a couple of days later, I was really down. A couple of days later, I have a flood. It's raining one night and the pump doesn't work and everything in the basement gets destroyed. And that's where I was living. And my furniture's gone, bed's gone, done. 2 days after that, my dog dies.
Oh my God.
So I'm sitting here like, okay, I have nothing here. There's nothing holding me back from leaving. So I started submitting for work. I got a call back for a feature film. And, you know, I mentioned I was in a relationship at the time, like a wonky relationship. And so I got this call back, right? And it was off of backstage.com. And most actors and actresses know, like, Backstage can be a place for good work and bad work.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of work you regret and you beat yourself up for days and days in and days out. And so I asked the person that I was with, I was like, so what do you think? I got this call back, but it's in LA. I was like, they're asking me to fly myself out to go for a callback. They're not offering me the role. It's just a possibility. And she knew what I kind of was going through. And she said, well, you know, do you want to get your heart broken again? Like, is this worth it for you? Like, I could understand if they were offering you the part, you would go. She's like, but it doesn't seem like they're sure what they want. And I was like, yeah. I was like, you're right. And so I went to her bathroom and I went on JetBlue.com and booked the plane ticket.
Wow.
And the next day I flew out. I went for the callback. Didn't tell anybody. I booked the part, came back home, packed my things, and moved to LA.
Wow.
And that year, I was very fortunate. I went from doing short films. I think I did over 60 or 70 short films from all these like all these different schools at the time and like independent projects. At the time, I did one really low budget feature film and a bunch of commercials and small speaking parts on TV. I went from that to moving to LA to starring in 5 back-to-back feature films with 2 guest starring spots on television shows. I was, for the first time in my life, I was able to afford things off of just acting, you know, but like basic things. I wasn't able to like buy cars and stuff. No, I was able to pay for rent. I was able to go out to dinner once a week or twice a week.
Which in this business, I mean, the percentage is higher now, but it used to be like 90-something% of actors are on unemployment, are making below a certain amount. But I mean, you're 28 years old. You've said so many things that most adults don't realize. Like, one of the things too is people do not like change, right? So like you said, they'll stay. They don't want to step out of their comfort zone. Most people know that in order to succeed, you need to be uncomfortable. You need to grow. We all know that, but it's easier to surround yourself with people that are like-minded, that are willing to step out of their comfort zone. Then the other thing that you said, I mean, you said a lot of important things. The other thing too is when you look for affirmation from other people, when you try to tell other people about your dreams, your desires, your goals that God has placed in your heart, you can't, even if you can articulate it, they don't understand it. What you're doing, this film, right? And we want to talk about this film. It touched me personally. You know, so if you think about, first of all the things that line up that got you to where you are, when you look back, only you could see how God plays a part in every single thing. Because
2020, man.
In order to get that teacher, in order for that girl to say what she said, all of those things are part of what God's plan is, right? But it's only when you look past, when you look back. So like if you did not sort of pursue your career, and if this wasn't what God was calling you to do, you wouldn't have moved. You would still be maybe with the girl, married, whatever. You would not be pursuing this, because I could tell you that film, I mean, to some people, it's just a movie, but you spoke about a topic that nobody talks about. I mean, the film is breaking every chain. How did this come about?
Oh, well, like you said, it's been a long time coming. And to me, it was like divine intervention. You know, it was COVID happened. No one was working. No one was getting anything. Everybody thought the entertainment industry was done forever. And some still believe that, but things are looking up. So I had a full year of not working. You know, I went from doing all these incredible things that I never expected myself to accomplish. And then February 2020 hit. February 2020, March hits, and everything's over. And I got really lucky. I hate calling it luck, because some people say it's when preparedness and opportunity meet. That's what luck is. I had done a movie in 2019 in Mexico, right? And I had met a bunch of people, networked. I was very friendly, I'm very cordial, and I keep in contact. And in November of 2020, I said to myself, you know what? I was like, I'm going to start looking for work. I know there's probably nothing out there, but I need to stay hopeful that I can keep pursuing this dream. And so I went online, because my agents told me there's nothing's happening. No one's working, you know, just take a break, relax, claim your unemployment, and just try not to lose your mind. That's not good enough for me. I started submitting for work, and I wasn't even looking for, I was just looking to see if anyone would audition me. So I was just applying for any feature films out there. And I got asked to audition for this one feature film. And this wasn't Break Every Chain. This is another movie. And then it happens to be that this girl that I met, who was supposed to work on this film in Mexico, remembered me and wanted me to audition because she was producing it. And I got the part, and I was on set for this movie. While I was shooting this movie, this was an 18-day film shot in the Catskills. While I was on this movie, this is day maybe 9, I get an email out of the blue from Craig Syracusa, the director of the film, telling me he's got this project with Dean Cain, and that they're interested in me for the lead role. And I was like, oh, okay, when are you guys shooting? Yeah, I'm interested. But I was like, nobody's working right now. I was like, when are you guys, when is this happening? The film starts shooting a day and a half after my first film wraps. So I was like, the director was like, look, I'm sorry. He was like, I know that could be really tough, so we'll just look for somebody else. And I was like, no, hold on a second. I was like, I read your script. I love the script. I love the story. I was like, if you are okay with me leaving this set and coming straight there and going to work with you, I am more than capable of doing that. And so he was like, okay. He was like, all I need you to do is just take this one scene and just put it on tape and send it to me. Sure. And it was the last scene of the film. And I don't want to give away any spoilers, but I'm speaking to my therapist about my problems. And do you remember which scene it is?
Oh, I remember. And
Yeah.
I guess the therapist.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember.
So I had that scene. I sent it to him. And he was like, yeah, no, I knew that's what you were going to give me. He was like, yeah, I'd love to have you. My producer's going to be in contact. So now I'm sitting on a movie that I'm already filming, knowing that I have this really big film coming up a day after, which was kind of bizarre because, like I said, divine intervention. This came out of nowhere. And then I asked Tim how he found me. He was like, I was just looking online for people, and I saw you, and you fit the description. You had the skills required, and I looked at your resume and your reel, and he was like, you had everything that I wanted. And there was a scene in my reel that I did, and I don't know if I mentioned to you, I did mention to you, I did a bunch of short films and student films for barely any money. There was one student film I did with this kid in Rochester where I played a vet who was giving out death notifications in the military. And I got paid almost nothing for this film, bare pennies. And I dedicated a lot of time to going up to Rochester on the weekends to film this project. And I ended up going to a bunch of film festivals and won a bunch of awards. And they were like, the second we saw that scene in your reel, we knew you were right for the part. The second we saw that scene. So it's like, it goes back in hindsight. You can connect every decision you've made to how your outcome, whatever your situation is today. And so it was just everything lined up. And if I wanted, I couldn't stop it if I wanted it to. You know, it feels like it's a moving train and I'm just along for the ride.
Well, you're right. I mean, so look, do not despise the day of small beginnings, right? Which is, but the thing too is that you're right. You're on the train, but you're at some point, you have to be following God's plan. There has to be. I know you're discerning because there's no way. Because look, if these things weren't all part of God's plan for your life, and like you said, there's no such thing as luck. If it wasn't part of God's plan, you have to think about when he Googled or looked up whatever search engine he used to find you, for you to get that role. If you didn't get that short film role, most likely he wouldn't have hired you. If it was a day off, if he had some restrictions with COVID, all of these things had to line up in your favor in order for you to do the film. And the outcome of the film, if you weren't the star, would not be the same. And the subject matter, and which we need to talk about quickly, is that you're talking about something that first responders, police officers deal with on a daily basis. And if you could, I mean, obviously you played, the main character. So if you could explain to the audience a little bit about the thesis of the film, the project, the character, how you prepared for that.
Well, okay. Well, the story, it's the true story based off of the book by Jonathan Hickory about Jonathan Hickory's life. Jonathan Hickory was a police officer for 10 years, first responder who had faced tremendous adversity. He's seen death countless times. He experienced the death of his firstborn son. He turned to alcoholism and had a really long battle with PTSD. And the movie tells his story and his redemption by finding God, how he made it out alive by taking on the essence of Christ, the essence of the Holy Spirit, just changing his entire moral outlook on life, and how that's kind of made him the man he is today. It's a darker film. It's not a cookie cutter film, because it talks about this unspoken thing within first responders that makes them feel weak sharing. You don't hear people talk about their problems because you're told not to bring your problems home. So you create this disconnect with your family, and ultimately they're the ones that pay the price. And that's a systemic issue in a whole with how police officers are trained and how police officers have to deal with this. But at the end of the day, they're the people that take on the bulk of whatever the risk is. It's not our government, it's them, it's these people, and they're brave. And there's one thing I tell people this all the time. The hardest thing to ever evoke as an actor is fear.
Mm.
That's a hard thing to play because people rarely put themselves in positions in life to experience fear in a way where they can capture that moment in their mind and be able to replicate it.
Mm.
So for someone like myself who constantly puts themselves in uncomfortable situations where, failure is inevitable and somehow coming out alive, I was able to take that part of my life and bring it into Jonathan's story.
Mm.
And so the training I had there, I grew up with firefighters, police officers, EMTs, sanitation workers, first responders. These are the people I know. These are the people that, this is someone I probably would have been if I didn't go after this, because I didn't want to do medicine. And if it wasn't acting, it probably would have been a union job. It probably would have been something that, I can get through quickly and reap the, reap the
20-year retirement, right?
yeah,
20-year
one,
retirement.
2, 3, and plus you're a product of your environment. So if your community is all doing that, you're going to follow suit. Luckily, I didn't, because now I can go and tell these amazing stories that bring awareness to people like Jonathan, who were courageous enough to share their story. Because, I mean, for me, it's hard enough. I have trouble watching myself on screen only because, especially with this film, because I tear my heart open, and it's like, here, let me do this, record it, and now give it to you to watch, and let's see what that lasts, what kind of impression that leaves on you. And that's a big responsibility. And the fact that I feel this, I can't imagine what Jonathan felt sharing his story with the world, just the honesty, between him and his wife and how they got through it. Because this isn't just a story about Jonathan. This is a story about his family, about him taking on this new moral essence and his wife doing the same, because it's a two-way street. It takes two to tango. You need to be forgiven. You can't just accept that, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and that's just how I'm going to be. The beauty of their story is the fact that they were able to fix something that was broken. We live in a world where people can buy something new on Amazon and get 1-day shipping like that. You can't go and buy a new human relationship on Amazon. People are ready to just throw things out. People want new constantly. Hopefully this helps people feel that it's okay to not be perfect, but it's also okay to put your ego aside and forgive.
You're right. And like you said, you broke the mold. Listen, I've been in the faith-based world now for over 10 years, creating faith-based content, worked on a lot of films, documentaries, did my own films, of course. And this film breaks the mold. And like I said, I've reviewed so many movies and books, and usually I'm after 12, 15 minutes, I'm like, all right, I got to sit through the rest of this. But this film is amazing. It really is. And like you said, just a statistic for people that don't, I mean, I have friends that are chaplains and that work with NYPD that have been to plenty of scenes where police officers have committed suicide. But just as a statistic, in 2019, there's over 228, officers, whether they were retired or active, that committed suicide. And I've covered stories. I've interviewed, first responders, FDNY, and most of them have similar stories like Jonathan, whether they cannot detach, you cannot detach from sort of the crime scene. It's very hard to sort of have no emotional attachment. You can't bring it home. And then you can't always go to your superiors. So most of them, it leads to alcohol abuse, abuse within a marriage. Sometimes it's suicide. And I know, speaking to some, if they were to go to their superior and tell them what they're going through, they could get their badge taken away there, so it is difficult. And also too, as men, I know from my dad, first generation from Italy, they don't talk about emotions. They don't share emotions. They hold it in. You're right. And you see now the newer generation, like I'm so much older than you, but we are very different, right? And we need to express ourselves. You cannot hold it in. And this film really breaks the mold and shows that we need to, first of all, we need to think about and talk about what they're going through, appreciate them a lot more, but also it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to let people know what you're going through. Do not bottle it in and do not feed the flesh, as you say in the film. So let me ask you, what did you learn personally? Has your faith been strengthened through this process? I know the question comes up in the film a lot, like, what is the point of all this? And I know it's a hard question. I don't think anyone could really answer the point, but what is the point of all this? What did you learn from this film?
There's always three sides of a story. There's my side, there's your side, and then there's the truth. The one thing I learned is that people are going to have a perception of what the truth is based off of the information that's given to them. So the information that's given to them is entirely dependent on who's telling these stories. So you have to have people that tell all sides so people can get an understanding. You can't just have a one-sided narrative, because that's not fair. It's never been fair. I've learned personally, just from wearing the outfit, having the utility belt on all day, just, you know, waking up and having these moments where you don't know if today is going to be your last day on earth, if this goodbye with your wife or your kids is your last goodbye, if you're ever going to see these people again, and you wake up with that fear, I think, every day. And the fact that as a first responder, you have to kind of desensitize yourself to this fear that keeps growing daily it's not, I don't want to call it strange, but it's sad. You know, you have to take and bear this stress and this weight on your shoulders that most people don't and will never understand until you step into their shoes. I learned a lot of logistic things, practical things. I learned how to shoot a gun properly, obviously, because you can't have a cop film without shooting a gun the right way, because everyone's gonna.
You can't hold it like this, like in the movies.
No, you don't hold it like that. No, so I learned a lot of cool things about protocols. And Jonathan was a traffic officer who rode a motorcycle, so I learned the protocols of what it's like to ride and be a motorcycle cop, and how to mount and dismount a vehicle properly. How you respond to calls, those things personally I love. That's the bread and butter for me. Like I get to learn, I get to step into the shoes of a police officer for a day and kind of have this firsthand account without having to go to the academy. Although we did have academy scenes where I had to do kind of what they did at the academy, which was also really cool. But I learned that mostly that first responders deal with a lot of unspoken stress and anxiety that they have to figure out how to live with and deal with practically in certain high stress situations that most people could never quite fathom. And yeah, I learned what it's like to work with a phenomenal director who is very collaborative and allows you to try new things. I could go on for days.
I look forward to interviewing him as well.
Yeah, he's great.
And you learned a few things too. I mean, you learned, number one, how God can use you to evangelize, to inspire us, because so we're all vessels.
Well, there's a part of the question that I didn't answer. You mentioned, how did it affect my faith? All right. Well, going into these things, you know, I was always very spiritual. I was raised Roman Catholic. But then, like, you know, as you get older, I had a separation with the church because I went away to school. I wasn't practicing my faith on every given Sunday. And I just grew apart from what my faith was. And during the film, one of my closest friends that I grew up with overdosed and died. And that was really difficult because it was on day one. The day before we started shooting, you know, I of course you're always nervous when you take on roles like this because you never know if you can do it. You're taking a responsibility to show the world, tell the world this message, and you're the arc for that message. And the night before, I hadn't prayed to God in a really long time. I speak out loud. I was spiritual, like I said before, but I asked God to help me. I asked Him to give me the strength to be able to tell this story. And then the next day, I found out that Christian died, and I don't know. I felt really guilty about that happening because I almost asked for it. So I don't know. You take these signs with a lot of, I take them with a grain of salt, but Jonathan offered to, they rearranged the production schedule for me so that Jonathan, who kindly offered to drive me back to New York the next day to go to to go to the mass and to go to the burial. We drove 7 hours there, and we had an incredible conversation about faith. He told me things that I probably shouldn't know. I told him things that he probably shouldn't know. We spoke about how he got more invested in faith and how God has changed his life. And he made he left a very remarkable impact on me. And that's only because of the impact I'm assuming God had on him when he was going through what he was going through. So I pray more. I talk to God almost every day. I ask for help when I need it. I ask for God to help other people. I learned the one thing is that I don't think God judges anyone.
Nope.
I don't think God sees color. I don't think God sees race. I don't think God sees sex. I think God sees people and souls, and I realize that you can believe in God whatever way you want, and that God's always going to be there, and whether you like it or not, we're all part of one thing. And the film brought me back to that.
Amazing. And like you said, the way God is always there. So even if you take a break from him, you go to college, he's there, he's waiting. And the thing is that he's always been there. He's always been waiting and knocking on the door, and he's patient, because he's always just like, okay, Ignacyo, when you're ready, I'm here. And the one thing that I can say personally, and everyone that knows me, obviously this is my shtick, is that, and I've interviewed, like I said, thousands of people, and all the stories are the same. They don't change. They're all the same. And at some point you need to go through, whether you call it the dark night of the soul, you need to hit rock bottom, whatever it is that when you come to Christ, or when you have a relationship with Christ, and you start to see how Jonathan spoke to you, the Holy Spirit, right? He spoke to you, your life changes. And it's not like you become this like wacko or weirdo. It's just that you rely on something else, and it gives you clarity of what's truly important, what's my purpose. And it's just comforting. And the thing is that
I feel aligned. It made you feel aligned with something greater than yourself.
Exactly. And you need to, the way you're speaking about it now is what more people need to do. The same way the film talks about an issue that people don't want to talk about. The more you talk about it and the more people see it, or even if you don't want to talk about it, they'll see something different in you, and they'll say, what's different about this guy? And that's what people are drawn to, and they want to know. But the thing too, Ignacyo, that goes along with that is there's more responsibility now. Because when you call yourself a follower, you say you have a relationship, and you know people are watching you. They're watching everything. And now you're representing something beyond yourself. And that's where it becomes tricky and difficult. And working in Hollywood and working with stars and all that, I can tell you the temptation is everywhere. We know that. We're not perfect. You're not perfect. None of us are perfect. So as you continue down this path, right, always have that conversation with God, and always discern, and always check in with him and say, God, is this what you're calling me to do? You're a role model now. You're representing something way beyond yourself. And I guarantee that more doors will open up, and you will become, and I think you are now, the celebrity at St. Athanasius.
Thank you so much. Actually, you want to see something funny, Father?
I know exactly what you're going to show me. I know. He already told me. Father Ron said that you have an Oscar. Is that what it's called?
Father
That's amazing.
Ron got me an Oscar.
Amazing.
And it's a replica. It's the same weight. It's the same company that makes them. So
Amazing.
it's not like one of those plastic ones. Like, you could do some damage with this thing.
And how many friends of yours have bought you that? Like, just
Father Ron.
Exactly.
Father
Exactly.
Ron.
Listen, my brother, we will be friends for a while. Trust me. Ignacyo, it's been a pleasure. I'm going to pick up my son. My pleasure now. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure you support Ignacyo, support the film. We will continue to talk to him and continue to update you on his success. Always remember, guys, you have the ability to inspire and evangelize through words and actions. God bless you.